Good evening and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Backstage Pass. I am your host, Vince Edwards. You may know me from Sound Image Productions, plus I've got a couple closed roadie groups on Facebook, one called The Backstage Pass, another one called Death by Loadout. Come check us out. We're getting up to some fucking crazy over there. Listen, this evening, I've got all kinds of crazy shit going on, kids. So I'm working through, you know, I've got my LD is off with Primus on tour right now. My co-host is out with John Legend on tour right now. These are good problems. So I've been lucky enough to have Rob Robertson from, oh my God, he's just a legend in his game. Badass LDs fixing the lights for us.
Yep.
I think they look good. I don't know. I'm an audio guy. I don't give a shit. All right, and then Bernie Broderick, the legendary loudspeaker designer, God in the game, Adamson, L Acoustics, EAW, the shit right behind me. His girl snatched him up and took him to Hawaii. You bastard.
I know.
So, all right, that's that. We got to do it, but I got real lucky. What I did is I reached out and got one of my dear good friends, the one and only Winston Dama, to cover his place. Hello, Winston. How are you this evening, my brother?
Vince.
It is such a treat to have you here.
Good to be on the show.
It is.
Good to be here.
It's great to have you back. We had you on because, I mean, your career is pretty damn impressive. It's 40 plus years of dealing with some of the biggest rock and roll acts in the game, all the way from the touring in Australia and all around the world to doing the casino circuit I mean, there's really no aspect of this game you'd understand. Plus, you are easily the best electrician I know. You're clearly a master electrician. There's so many things that you've made right in this building that I so owe you for. So it's just such a treat to have you here, buddy. How are you?
I'm good, actually. We've got a few more electrical projects to do, actually.
It's never going to end, Winston.
Yeah, we do.
No, it's called work guarantee, buddy.
Yeah.
Keeping you booked up, man. It's just as it should be. And, you know, when I put you on a thing like that, I always know, it's like, remember when that gear came back, that lesson we learned about sending stuff out to Burning Man?
Burning Man, yes.
I'm never doing that again.
Right.
I didn't want anybody to touch distros except for you.
Right.
There's just some things that you just don't let the kids play with.
Right.
And, you know, whenever we get in those type of predicaments, I know who to call the big guns and, you know, get it done right the first time. And so it's a great treat for us. Don't you look at that camera. Don't you pay no attention to that. It doesn't help. It's the kiss of death wins.
I'm thinking here.
Is that what
I'm thinking.
I saw some smoke coming out of your ears there.
Should we explain to our folks,
what are we telling them?
Well, what the problem is with gear going out to Burning Man?
Well, okay, now let's not get in the weeds. You're a weeds guy. Okay.
I am.
Tell them why. Tell them why.
Well,
but hopefully most of the people we're talking to in our audience
probably been there.
Well, they're at least in the game on one level or another. Yeah. There's one word. Playa. Fucking
playa, yes.
My God,
for those of you that don't know what that's about, if you've not been there or know somebody that's been there, it's basically a festival in blowing dust.
Yeah.
And it's a real fine dust.
It's not even dust, it's alkali.
Yeah,
it's more than dust. It is.
And it gets into everything.
Yeah.
You know, Vince mentioned something about one of our power distros needs to work. So this dust works its way into everything.
Everything.
So long story short, it got into the breakers, the main breakers in this power distro, to where when the contacts tried to close, they couldn't close because they were held apart by all the dust that had gotten inside those things. So yeah, it's hard on gear.
It's relentless and ruthless. Like nothing can stop it, and just trying to clean this stuff up, just from feed and stuff that went on that thing. And this isn't our first time. I think every 7 or 10 years we got to forget and. One of our friends will say, come on, man, we'll take good care of him. We're like, okay, you know, and then we let some shit go out and then, of course, immediately regret it. And, you know, it comes back and it takes untold hours cleaning everything up. You wipe it down and you come back after whatever chemicals or water you've used and it's there still. Yep. It reappears. There's a big white funky cloud over everything. And it's just awful. So let's not get stuck there. But our advice to you guys out there in the world of rental gear and letting things and helping out your friends, hey, that's a good thing to do. We are always there for B2B. We're always helping other businesses. We like to get you done. We're the answer people. We're firemen. We put shit out. We get it done. There's some places in life you have to draw a line. Burning Man is a line drawing place. You just know every time. Period. No. Full stop. No. All right. I just got that out there.
Okay. Or just budget for the breakage. Budget for a new set of faders. Okay?
Get ready to invoice the living shit out of people. It looks like you got people checking in already. Scott, the legendary badass Scott Chaney's checking in with us. The one and only godfather of rock and roll, the madman from Michigan, Charlie Zaricki, the godfather of this show. Truly just a just a sweetheart of a man. Pat O'Doula saying hi. Hey, gang, look at that.
Yep.
Pat, you, my friend, are excused from being late anytime because you are a true warrior of this show. We love him. He's a definite sponsor. And the love of my life, the goddess in my world, the one and only Jackie Canterbury of Slow Fiber is checking in. I'm crazy about that woman. Swear to God. Hey, Win, do comments after we do our opening part here, babe. Okay, Win's figuring this out. He's great, but we're doing deal with that.
I'm a newbie.
When we cut over there, you can start saying hi to motherfuckers.
Okay.
All right, you got a card about some stuff.
Yeah, actually, we had
First,
a
we
really
wanna-
cool show. I had a great guest on last week.
Man.
Sydney from over there at High Tech, their console rental place.
Sydney Wilson.
Yeah, Sydney Wilson.
It was
I've worked with him
extraordinary.
directly, and I can tell you that he is amazing. He knows that stuff. It's amazing how he knows it. All those
He's
different
extraordinary.
consoles. And just
He is easily one of the smartest people I've ever met. But what I found interesting about that show, so I'm sitting here with a genius, Bernie Broderick, and a genius, Sydney Wilson.
Right.
Literally two of the smartest, probably the two smartest people I know, without any hyperbole.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's the Mikey. He was in the mix. It was a triad. It was a triangulated genius pool with the dumbass in the middle. But it was extraordinary, right? And I'm blowing him up because I love the guy, you know. And he takes it to this heartfelt, deep place about caring for others in the game and helping the female end of the game where we're kind of light and we're not doing as well as we could in our industry, and the steps that he's taken. It was extraordinary. And the comments after the show were wonderful. Like, people really felt that show.
Right.
You know, he was sincere. He was super heartfelt. He's had some experiences as an African American in the game and stuff that he's had to overcome. And man, has he, because he's at the top of what he does. I mean, he's literally one of the best in the game.
he is great. He's so helpful.
Yeah.
He is just
I've never stumped him.
Yeah.
Never stumped him. We call up with some big problems sometimes, and he's like, you got to do A, B, and C, and you're good to go.
Right.
And that is invaluable. I mean, he's just priceless. The guy's extraordinary.
right.
What else you got, baby?
Well, of course, we talked about Bernie already sneaking off to Hawaii.
He kind of fled. I think it was more like it.
Was that what it
Yeah,
was?
it was a kind of an escape. He told me at the last minute, it was like, yeah, I can't make this week. I'm like, what are you doing, Bern? It's like, my girl's, carrying me away to the tricky islands.
Right. Now, is Captain Snoopy, is he hanging with him, or is it?
No, Snoop was here. Yeah, was he here yesterday, Mikey? We had lunch with him, right? Oh, yeah, I gave you the day. He had the day off because he's working
okay.
too damn much, plus he's working this weekend on those shows.
Right.
And so we let him have the day off. Big Daddy was cool with it. And Captain Snoop came in, and, this guy's like my uncle. I mean, he's a 40-year veteran in the game. He's a total badass. And so he came in, and we dragged him off to lunch. It's kind of a ritual we do when we get together. He's my lunch guy,
Right.
And
He's a hell of a nice guy to hang with, too. Got some great stories.
he's
Seriously.
endless fountain of knowledge and spastic kind of stories, and he's got the salt water in his veins. He's a sea dog, and it was lovely to see him. I guess he had some yacht coming in that he had to deal with, some 110-foot thing that, because he does part-time stuff where he captains these yachts. I guess rich
that's
people
right, he
have
does.
these big-ass boats, and they don't really use them that way. But they do need to get them from point A to point B so they can use them where they want to use them. They just kind of come on them and sit. And so that's what he was doing.
Right.
So, yeah, but hopefully, just a little shout-out, hopefully he will be on next week. I'm going to try to get him at minimum to be next week's guest host. But more likely, if I can hold him down and kind of choke him out a little bit until he gives, I'm going to try to push him into that seat and dig around in his brain. He got into the business after he was a soldier in Vietnam, and when he came out of that, one of the first things he did was start driving a bus for Santana, and he went on to become a sound guy. And he's got a sound rig right over there. He calls that the rig, his retirement rig, and he goes out and does corporate stuff for us. He's a hell of a sound guy. So hopefully we can get in here and dig around in his brain a little bit.
Yeah, he'll have some great stories.
Yeah, he's got that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of an endless fountain. Yeah. What else you got?
Well, we have some upcoming shows we probably should talk about. Future guests. We've got shows that we're currently doing also at like Oxbow.
Well, we got you
Napa.
busy this week. Tomorrow, I believe you're going to go hang out with Mr. John Fogerty and
Correct.
make him sound pretty. And then I think on the weekend, we got you also. You're very busy this
Yeah, no, we
next
got
5 days.
Yeah, tomorrow's John Fogerty. Then the next day is Herbie Hancock.
Yeah. And then I think you got something Tuesday. You're doing Mr. Van Morrison.
Van Morrison, correct? Yes.
Well, we got the right guy for it. A guy who can, run the systems. It's an Anya rig I think you're going to be dealing with.
Yep.
and that's a very tricky system. So we need somebody who's checked out on it and
Mm-hmm.
understands it. So visiting engineers don't get over their head and freak out and run away screaming like little
Yeah.
girls, because it's some shit.
It's like some of the new mixing consoles out there. You don't walk
Yeah.
up to that thing and do anything
no,
with
no,
it.
No,
until
You know, I try to tell them it's just a giant mouse, but they ain't hearing it.
No, it's
Put
not.
an SC10 in front of them. It's like, you know. So.
Yeah, no, one of the changes that is taking over our industry, especially with a rig like this, is that, you know, we are no longer just audio engineers. We're, you know, that/IT tech,
Yeah.
you know, which is
Well, it's a network-heavy rig.
very heavy.
Yeah,
network.
and it definitely requires an understanding of workflow, some of the IT processes, certainly networking, switching. It's a thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's a thing.
Absolutely.
I've seen grown men actually quit over this rig because they just couldn't get their head around it, and we kept pushing them like, "You can do it, man. You got this."
Just gotta stay with it.
And like they literally like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the plug and play shit." You know?
Yeah,
And
it's
like,
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. There was a point in time where there was a little scariness about it. You know.
you.
For me, yeah,
For
yeah,
you.
absolutely.
I
'cause,
understand.
You know, I'm not going to say that networking is my
I think,
strongest point. You know?
Well, you know, we came from a certain school of music, which is or technology, let's say, certainly analog. And
Yeah,
but I think you've made really good. You know, when the transition happened, which is probably 15 years ago or more now.
It started then, yeah, usually.
Yeah, you know, and it's been a little back and forth, but we're pretty solidly in the digital world now. And I'm certainly from the old school analog ways myself. And luckily, I can hire other people that are smarter than me, usually younger guys like Mikey here.
Mikey's
You
amazing.
know, yeah. For a 33-year-old man, it's funny because he stumps me on, doesn't stump me, he keeps up with me on old bands, old
Right.
technology. He can talk shop with me on that and then jump into the, you know, the worlds of the SSL and the Rivage and the, you know, and so on. And we were just playing with an SD10 in here, the Digico product, fine product. And he seems to handle it across the board. And I like to say a little bit dismissively, it's because the little bastard grew up with a laptop in his crib. So, you know,
I think he did,
better be
yeah.
good at it.
It's true, you know.
Yeah, you know, so we didn't have that advantage/disadvantage. I don't know. It's hard to know, but I know that, yeah, we count on the young guys a lot because they really, it seems to be, it comes to them quicker. And easier.
The networking is definitely more second nature
Yeah.
to the younger group than
That's
the
right.
older guys.
That's absolutely right.
And you're right. They've grown up with it, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I know kids that, you know, say, you know, around where I live that, you know, they give them laptops in, you know, grade school,
That's true.
you know, and they're, you know, they're doing all this stuff online and networking and doing, I mean, it's just like, okay, don't expect to get my help with any of that because that's
Well,
not
you know,
my thing.
I only know from my relatives and family as kids. My kids are grown, and we kind of came up in a slightly more of that transitional
Right.
time. But my brother's got young children, and you know, his daughter, I remember at 4, was navigating a laptop better than I could in many ways. And the same with his 7-year-old and his 15-year-old. I mean, it's always been there for him.
Yeah.
So it's not at all daunting. You know, there's no technology gap. They don't have a gap at all. It's just been there. It's in front of them, and they kind of figure it out as they go. And before you know it, they're just zipping around on the thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So I think that's largely
I
this age group. And
When you and I were in school,
Yeah.
like grade school, high school,
yeah,
they were still teaching slide rule because
That's right.
calculators hadn't come out just yet,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. Or they weren't accessible to everybody.
But, yeah.
Remember that till Texas Instruments. started
Right,
whipping-
Texas
Yeah, and they
Instruments,
started
yeah.
making the pocket-sized
Yeah,
ones.
it would-
Even
well,
then,
if
they
it-
were kind of expensive.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
about $300 for a basic function
right.
calculator.
That's
It
right.
was pretty thick, about as thick as a pack of cigarettes, and you know,
Yeah, a little taller.
a little white. I mean, yeah, it'd barely fit in your pocket.
Yeah,
you know.
But that was the idea. Was it supposed to? That's when they were like, that was
Oh,
part
yeah.
of the sales pitch on it. You can fit it right in your pocket. Blah, blah.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like, yeah, and you know, walk around like this, kind of dragged down by the damn thing.
Right.
But, yeah, it was a different time and you know, different place. But we're lucky to have it that way. And you know, with some of the technology, we were able to really make some advancements and audio technology and you know, there's a lot of things. I remember when we were coming up, we didn't think we could control low end, omnidirectional waves. We were just like, yeah, that just goes wherever the fuck it wants. Just let it be, you know.
Right.
You know, we didn't really have the science on that wired up yet. That's
Right.
kind of a newer thing. Getting a laptop that invents is not much of an accomplishment. Fucking Pat's blowing me up on the TV. Yeah, Pat, I'm sending Winston after you when I get to interviewing. He's going to spank you for that. Yes, I need you. I want to instruct you, Winston, to be mean to Pat when you
Mean to Pat.
Hey,
Okay, got
just
it.
get him.
No
he's, he's cracking himself up right now. You son of a bitch. All right. More power to him. We wanted the people to be happy. That's what we want, Chris. All right, let's go through this list pretty quick. What do we got here? I don't want to get to this man.
No, actually, we're just about done with the list.
Okay, give me the damn list. Let me look at that thing. All right.
It's all yours, sir.
You're killing it, babe. You're killing it. All right, so look at John Fukushima.
Fukushima, yes.
Yeah, Fukushima. So Fuki's one of the videographers to some of the biggest bands in the world. Paul McCartney, Rolling Stones.
He's also backline tech.
He's kind of just a
Yeah,
badass.
I've worked with him a lot in backline.
He's a brother from the HA. You know, we don't speak much about that, but he's
Right.
red and white all the way. We don't use other names. And he's a badass. He's a long 45-year Patch member. And, Metallica's guy. And this week, I was talking to him earlier today. He's coming by tomorrow. We're going to go to lunch because he's kind of like a brother. You know,
Cool.
we do the Thanksgiving with him at the house. And,
Right, right.
we've got a long history. And he's telling me he's a videographer. And he does stuff in between tours for the union.
Right.
And tomorrow he said he's doing a conference at the Moscone for the hand surgeons. And I said, really? You're going to have some wicked close-ups? And he's like, yeah, Vinny, you're not going to believe it. I got to take video of people operating on cadaver hands. He's going to be, fucking poor Fuki, man. He's going to make a vault doing it. And he said it's just going to be interesting. So he's coming by to see us tomorrow. We're looking forward to that. I want to say hi to Noah the Beard Tanner. He's been out killing it for his family. He's got a new baby, so,
cool.
he's
Right on.
very cool. Quick shout out to Lee Wilkerson out there in Cuba. Hey, brother, keep doing what you do. You're killing it. And, of course, we already mentioned Wes Atkin, my lovely Jackie. We can't do this without saying hi to Janet.
Indeed.
Thank you, Janet, for letting me have your man for the evening. I'll give him back a little bruised, a little tattered, but he'll get back in one piece. And Ian Peacock across the ocean, he stays up till 3 o'clock in the morning to watch this in the UK because he's fucking a badass and a true loyal brother. I'm going to talk to my friend this evening.
You should.
We're going to reach back over to you a little bit to talk about how you guys know each other and shit. But
Okay.
let me get down with this. Thank you for being here this evening. And if you would, could you beat up on Pat O'Doul for me?
I will.
And say hi to Charlie and some of the rest of the kids.
Yeah.
All right,
I'll
brother.
handle this end of it.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Super appreciate it. All right, kids. Thank you for being here this evening. We have a cool-ass guest for you. On this show, we try to discuss different aspects of the audio business, of the production business, putting on the live, doing stuff in the game. And every night every show we try to do a slightly different discipline. I reached out to a very class act, a guy that's got a very specific lane in the game that I don't have a lot of history with. And he's a friend of Winston's, and we get to see him over at the Back Lounge with Robert Scoville, who's a dear friend and a frequent member on the show. And so we wanted to reach out to him. He's a studio designer. I think he's got 18, 20 studios under his belt. He owns Blue 7 Audio. He is a fucking cool guy. Let's check in with him. His name is Chris Cooper. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good.
It is a pleasure.
Are we done talking pterodactyl times?
Yes, we are. You're going to make me feel bad about being old school analog. Come on, man.
No, man. I
can't
started
help
there
it.
too. I started there too.
I own it. I own it. And I'm comfortable. I've always thought it was like, I don't work on cars. I know how to drive them. I like them. They get me from here to there. When I have a problem with my car, I take it to a guy that works on cars. That's what he does for whatever
Yep.
reason, and that fits into his wheelhouse. And I don't question it. I got money. I'll give it to you in trade for services. And what I do is run a sound company with my brother and with Dave Shadone. And so I get the right people for the thing I need them to do. And whatever their skill sets are, whatever their talents are. And some of these people come here a little unrealized. So we figure out what their deficits are, and we train them up, and we get them where they need to be, so we
Cool.
can start pushing them out in the real world.
That's
and that's,
cool.
you know what I mean? It's like, I want to be the master of a trade, not the jack of all trades. And so there's some stuff that I rely on other folks for, and I won't lie to you, when it comes to a lot of the newer stuff, I keep my thumb on the pulse as best I can, but I only need to know a certain amount. You know what I mean, Jelly Bean?
Little of the surface.
Yeah. Well, maybe a little more than that, so I can make sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. But at some point, I do the old man thing, and they do the young man thing.
Yeah, the lifting, the pushing. Yeah,
I'm tired, Chris.
yeah. You and me both, man.
Come on, man.
You and me both.
So, first of all, let me ask you, Winston can't say enough about you. How do you guys know each other?
Well, we actually met in the back lounge on Robert Scoville's
Oh, no kidding.
show.
Yeah.
And we just started talking, and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to be in Hayward." And I'm like, "Well, I live in Fremont. That's
Pretty damn close.
close." He's like, "Come on by one night." So we emptied a bottle of wine and
Oh, that's
sat
perfect.
around till 1 in the morning talking and
Yeah.
had a great time.
That's fantastic.
It was really cool. It was nice to talk because we've been shut down for so long.
Yeah.
It was so nice just to have somebody else in a different sled into the industry and sit and talk with them and
Right,
realize, hey, we have a lot of similar kind of areas, that cross over.
Overlap.
Big time overlap. So it was, some experiences I would love to have had in my career, maybe still will, who knows?
Yeah, it's early, man.
And, and it was the same, Winston was asking me about this and that and everything. But then, of course, I took him out to my studio, and that's when the conversation changed.
Yeah.
He's like, wow, I like this. This is cool.
Well, he is a knucklehead that loves his technology, and so I can imagine you probably blew his doors a little bit.
It was fun. We had a good time. That's because I'm kind of the same way. I'm like I'm a mechanically inclined person. So
Sure.
I tend to think about the new technology and the same problems you guys have. I'm having to learn IT too.
Yeah.
And I'm probably a little ahead of both of you just because of the install stuff we do. But man, there is so much I don't know and don't understand.
Well, talk to me about that. So, is a part of Blue 7? I mentioned Blue 7 Audio. Is this a part you have an install arm integration?
Well,
part of your
basically, I do contracting work for David Carroll Associates, and David is kind of the grandfather of installs in the Bay Area. He built Skywalker. I mean, that was his first project.
Damn.
So David's been around a long time. He's done a lot of projects, and he tends to like to kind of push the cutting edge. So I just did a project at a certain unnamed fruit company.
Good man, you handled that perfectly.
In Cupertino.
Yes, you handled that perfectly.
And we did a huge, very cutting edge install there I started there October last year, and I finished up just about 3 weeks ago. And I'll actually be back doing some additional upgrades.
Sure.
And it's involved. It's deep. We're doing 4K video.
Yeah.
We got an LED wall. We're doing full Atmos surround in a theater.
Yeah.
We have an audio control room with an S6.
Wow.
And we have a record booth, and we have, and then we have content going all over the building as well. So the networking thing is, I had to kind of knuckle down and learn some things, because if I didn't, it
especially if you're
makes it
swimming in those
complicated.
waters, because they don't go half measure on anything.
No, they don't. And the other thing about these guys is that unlike those of us, and I will say, because I came out of the live world long ago and left and sort of returned, is the whole notion of putting your audio into a general network is really frightening, and these guys don't think twice about it.
No.
Everything is, huge server room with 10 racks, 8 foot high, stuffed with gear and wire.
Yeah.
And everything's networked and it all flows together. They just go, oh, it's all packets. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
And that still frightens me a little bit.
You're not wrong. I understand completely.
But it works.
Yeah.
It does work. It hasn't been an issue thus far.
Yeah.
But I have to stop and go, oh, I really don't want to think about that.
I don't blame you one bit. So from the integration, you mentioned you came from some live sound background. Was this when you first got into the game, when you first started?
I've been a musician all my life. I played guitar since I was probably seriously since I was about 10, but prior to that too. And when I was a teenager, I was playing in bands like every kid does.
Sure.
And because I was mechanically inclined, I tended to be the guy who set up the PA and got things going. And next thing I know, people were like, hey, can you come out on tour with us? Hey, can you come do this show?
Sure.
And I had no clue what I was doing. I literally learned the hard way. I banged my head against pieces of concrete to kind of get there. And then I was doing that for a long time, up until about 1990, 91. And I got burnt out. And I said, this is not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a studio guy. I wanted to do production, recording, mixing. I want to be a mixer guy.
Yeah.
So I ended up in a studio. I was there 15 years. When I left, I was chief engineer.
What's the name of the studio?
Musicanic Studios.
Oh, no kidding.
So when I left there, I did the very thing I said I would never do, build and manage a recording studio. I did that 18 years ago, and it's still going somehow, limping along.
Yeah.
But that's, I ended up, be careful what you wish for. I ended up becoming a mixer, and I miss recording. But I ended up going back into live sound just because of changes in the industry, 10 years ago.
Sure.
And things were getting a little rough in the studio world, and I realized, and I'd been doing little bits of live sound and doing installs and mostly churches and corporate kind of stuff and that kind of thing, and I just realized, I'm pretty good on a digital console because I've been working on them longer than the live guys, and this is an easy transition for me. So I moved over and started doing live sound again, and was doing it full time at the Fox in Redwood City for about 8 years, and doing a couple of churches that were pretty big churches, 1,500 seat kind of venues. And
yeah, they're actually a really good market for. I mean, the larger they come, the bigger their systems are, the more technology they have.
The more technology they get, and they'll if they're that big, they'll kind of go for the bang for the buck.
They will pay for their service. That's a fact. Yeah.
That industry really started growing in the mid '90s, and I was sort of loosely aware of it then.
Yeah.
But around 2000, it became very apparent to me that this was a market to be mined.
You are not wrong. Well put.
And so I jumped into that, and it helped sustain me for a long time. I learned a lot too. Learned a lot about, networking, putting things together, putting systems together, and I'd already done acoustic tuning for studios, but it's a different animal for live. So it was interesting to kind of apply my rote learning to that, and tune rooms and tune venues and tune churches, and so I've been doing that kind of thing off and on periodically. I got a project right now for a drummer who can't build a room in his garage, but we got to soundproof it. So I came up with a little system that I think might work. I'm hoping.
Yeah. Well,
I just look at the numbers and go through things and figure it out and see, okay, well, this is what we can do on your budget. Here, let's try this, and let's hope it works. So
give it pencils.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
that
totally
kind
get
of
it.
thing. So.
Well, with all those varied experiences, the church work, the integration work, the live work, the studio work, do you have a preference of the four?
I have to say the studio, because
you like
it's really
the control of it.
No, it's not that. It's just it's nice to be able to have a little time to be more creative on the record side.
Sure.
Where you don't really get that in the live side. You really kind of have to decide beforehand and be prepped and set up and go, and you don't get a break. It happens.
Yeah, that's good.
I will say that live sound taught me a hell of a lot about mixing and how to mix quickly.
Yeah.
That
audio,
definitely, I learned a lot from that very early on. But I like the studio. I love mixing. Mixing's fun, but I miss recording. I miss live bands in a room. That's seriously missing across the whole industry.
Well,
and I really miss that, with a bunch of people in a room with the energy, doing their thing, and getting it down and get it going. And it's been a couple of years since I actually did a big recording. I've been doing some small stuff and drums and a bass player, or individual instruments and stuff. But I miss the full-fledged thing.
let me ask you, when Pro Tools and the DIY movement kind of came full circle, and did that affect the amount of work here, the workflow, the type of work?
Well,
was
yeah,
coming to you?
it did. But for me, because I worked 2 buildings away from Digidesign and was one of their first testers in the early 90s, I've been a Digidesign guy for almost 30 years. And I worked at a studio that very quickly adopted that changeover from analog to digital.
Yeah.
Because we saw that future. In that sense, it was not a change. In fact, it's finally gotten to a point now where I feel like, wow, this is really cool. This sounds really good. I can do things now that I would have had to do in the analog domain.
Yeah.
I don't have to anymore. I can do it here, and I can save it, instant recall.
Yeah.
And that right there, that little word, recall,
People seem to love that feature.
it's
Yeah.
it's indispensable because
Yes.
years of Polaroids and cameras taking pictures and writing notes, and,
Yes.
and then going back and setting it all up and not having sound the same, and
Yeah.
that was a sea change. But yes, it did. It has changed. I mean, it's changed the whole industry. It's really affected everyone in positive and negative ways. It definitely, the do-it-yourself has sucked a lot of money out of studios,
Oh, man.
and
It's straight up killed a batch of them.
it did. It killed
Yeah.
a lot of people. But it's
Yeah.
not just that. It's also the do-it-yourself distribution onto the internet has
Yeah.
changed things. And
Yeah.
and I was in on that because I had a band for 26 years
This new Sun we're talking
Yeah,
about?
new Sun, which technically still exists because I'm actually still doing music. We mined that. We mined that internet, and it was bountiful and wonderful in the early days, in the late 90s.
Yeah.
It was, we had a website up in 1997 with audio. Now, nobody could hear it,
Yeah.
but we had Real Audio, which was Thomas Dolby's company, was in the studio,
aware.
was in Music Annex with us. That's
Yeah,
where they
no
were headquartered.
Yeah.
So we were their guinea pigs. I mean, in that sense, my whole life has been kind of a spoiled life because I've been around all these developments.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, you do this, here, come work with us on that.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking about the S6, and you have the SC48 over there.
Sure.
So that came out of Euphonics, and the Euphonics M5 was a console I helped them with on the fader automation.
No kidding.
Yeah, because a couple of my friends worked there. So
Wow.
they would come over and we would do testing on the fader automation and
Very
talk
cool.
about how that would go. And so I had a little hand in that. So there's a lineage there that continues on that I'm like, yeah.
Connective tissue.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of it. And I've been really, really fortunate in that. Just kind of being in this place, Silicon Valley, where the things are changing, where the
Sure.
technology is.
Yeah.
And now I'm there kind of again with David Carroll and doing the installs I do with them. I'm kind of their control room guy. I build the control rooms, put them all together, and wire everything, and then run it, and then do all the testing, and then do all the software. And I actually had, with the fruit company job, I actually had to learn a piece of software I had no clue about. And I cannot say I'd recommend it, and I won't mention the company, but it was a deep process, and I really did not, in a deep pool of water, I probably got into the shallow end of it.
Oh, sure.
And the client even kind of went, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be using this or not, because it's deep.
It blows me away sometimes, the layers to these onions. I mean, they're dense.
Especially in broadcast, because they want to do everything.
Yeah, that's right.
It's an amalgamation of mixing music,
Yeah.
a live show,
Yeah.
projection, and information, very much, you know, what has now transitioned over into the touring world
That's
in
right.
the last 20 years, 30
boy.
years, really. And all of that, and then streaming broadcasting going out to the world. I mean, all of those things are all tied in the broadcast world, in the
Yeah.
corporate broadcast world.
Yeah.
And so now, of course, you know, with the pandemic, streaming became so important.
Oh, man.
Everybody jumped on that. It's like I had a little leg up on that
Yeah.
because I've already been in that field for a while.
Sure.
And churches were looking at that kind of thing. You know, they were already starting to move in that direction. And of course, they went monumental title shift. over
Yeah,
that,
I think
so.
that initially they started with the late 80s, 90s, the satellite feed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was their first jump. And, you know, these people are smart. They chase that money. And,
They did.
And I guess, you know, saving people's lives, whatever their spiel is. But I know that some of their first out of the cannon kind of non-big three network stuff was churches and wrestling. Those guys came out, all these weird
Well, I used to
small
actually
markets.
work doing the sound for WWE.
Yep, there you go.
We used to, at the Annex, we did that. And I actually did a lot of that sound design.
Yeah, I bet.
So, and that was the great thing about the Annex, is because when I came to that studio in the early 90s, it was still predominantly analog.
Yeah.
And as in those days, as all studios, they kind of went in, you know, waves of
Sure, peaks
really,
and valleys.
you know,
Sure.
good stuff going on, lots of creativity, and then kind of a dead time, and then lots of. So I came in at a time when it was a little dead, and the studio needed refurbing and needed new life. And I came in with about 7 people who were all fairly young, and a lot of them worked in Silicon Valley, had worked, you know, for companies in there, and we saw the opportunities, and the 7 of us we went at that. So the development of digital recording, we looked at that and went, why are we doing reel-to-reel with radio spots?
Yeah.
That was the first thing. As soon as DigiDesign Pro Tools became reasonably good sounding and quick in edit, it was like I was doing things in 96, 97 on that system.
You didn't jump first from analog to like DAT or DCC. You didn't have
No,
that
there
step
was
in between.
the ADAT thing, which frightened everybody because
it
we
did.
opened one of those things up and looked
Yeah.
inside and went, ooh,
Oh, damn.
ooh, that's a VHS machine.
Basically,
That
that's right.
frightened the hell out of our tech. I remember that day very
Yeah,
clearly. I was
yeah.
like, okay.
Trouble.
You know, and then DADH, which were actually a really reliable machine. I worked on those. I
yeah.
still have one in my studio. It's still working.
Sure.
I can put tapes in there. They'll play back. It's not a problem.
Okay.
There was a brief period of that, but the Pro Tools thing, we all knew that was, because the random access, the ability to edit,
Yeah.
EQs in the box, you could recall a spot, make minor adjustments. No more of this, it's got to be perfect on the run there.
Yeah.
And what it allowed the studio to do was up our rates for less time.
Sure.
But we could make fixes. If they called us and went, we feel like that voice
that
there needs
part,
to,
yeah.
we could do it. Otherwise,
right.
they had to live with it.
Yeah.
It meant remixing, and they weren't willing to pay for that.
Most oftentimes not.
No.
Unless it was some kind of, record company type back thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
it just wasn't enough money.
So
in the
for
budget.
radio spots and then corporate, because corporate was starting to get into what they now call all hands, but they were doing content they were distributing to everybody in the building privately, securely.
Yeah.
We were doing CDs it started as cassettes, became CDs.
Right.
Then DVDs, and now of course it's just the all hands thing where it's all live streamed.
Yeah.
They have facilities, which is what we build at DCA and all the locations, and they do an all hands, and it's secure, and they can just stream it between their buildings. I mean, we're using GPS satellites for our clocking.
Okay.
On all our systems, yeah, so they can, for example, LinkedIn, I can say their name because we built something like 6 rooms for them, 6 major broadcast locations here in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
They had an office in Ireland, and they wanted to do their all hands from there because it was a new facility, and it's GPS clocked.
Wow.
And it comes live, CEO's there, goes to all the facilities all over.
Seamless.
Seamless, no problems. Audio live, he's talking to people on either end. People are doing presentations from San Francisco office back to Ireland and all the other companies, all real time.
Amazing.
And it works
No
really well.
latency issues.
Works really well.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was the whole evolution of that in the late 90s at the Annex. It was, and the other big one was toys and games. We got heavily into that. So Elmo, remember the Elmo toy?
I do, in fact.
I worked on that toy.
No kidding.
I have a picture of my best friend Benito, who plays violin in my band,
Yeah.
with a Elmo bent over with tools in his butt working on him.
You sure that's what he was doing? All right. No, I'm sorry.
We'll let Benito to answer that question. He'll laugh and turn red. But, we were doing toys and games. I did tons of games during that period. Mostly it was recording the voices and editing and all that.
Sure.
But new technology was popping up. BMW and Mercedes were doing voice-activated education systems inside their cars, where you'd ask a question and it would have an automated response. It was fairly simplistic. It was crude, but I did all of those. They're still using that stuff.
No kidding.
Do you have AT&T?
Yeah.
So your voicemail, the woman?
Yeah.
I recorded all those 20 years ago.
No shit.
They're still using the ones I
Was
recorded.
it an actual woman?
Yeah, she lives right here in Santa Clara.
Oh, you got to introduce me. No, I'm just joking. No, I always wondered about that, though.
There's 2 of them. There's Catherine, who is the voice, and then there was the voice, who was Gary Williams, who lives like a mile from me.
No
and I
kidding.
built a studio for him so he could do his stuff back like 25 years ago.
Voice of God type guy.
Yeah, he's like you, deep voice, Rich. He does the Raiders announcements games in the stadium.
No shit.
Yeah, that's
He's
been
a
his
house guy.
gig for years and years
That's
and
a
years.
great gig.
It's a great gig.
But did he move off to Vegas with that?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I think he's kind of retired at this point.
Gotcha.
But we were doing, I did all those voice prompts. They're still using them.
It's amazing.
It blows my mind.
Yeah.
They're still using the things I recorded like 20
worked.
years ago.
It's
It
just the
worked.
wheel,
Yeah, it's just pieces that they take. And, so we had to, the editing capabilities of DAW, digital audio workstations, just kind of changed everything. And because of that, we started seeing digital consoles. So we had a Euphonics at the Annex in the late 90s. Nobody had a Euphonics.
No.
So I learned how to work that console, and it was a pain.
Yeah, I bet.
It was awkward, but I loved that console. Mixing on that console,
Initially, did you love it?
I still loved it. It's just, mixing on it was crystal clear,
Intuitive.
clean, and you
Yes,
could
made
automate
sense.
everything and recall it.
Wow.
And so when that thing, I milked that for like 3 years because there were 3 of them in the Bay Area and no one knew how to work them. So I made money just
You were the go-to guy.
go-to guy to go and do mix
it's a nice
projects on
position
this,
to
which
be
was
in.
really cool.
Yeah, it's sweet.
But you talk about the changes in dealing with networking. So Fred Catero, who was my mentor and a good friend, and those of you who don't know Fred Catero is,
Explain to them.
Fred started recording in 1948,
Kind of a legendary badass.
worked in Columbia and New York, came out here and opened what would eventually become the Automat, working for Columbia. He recorded Santana's first 3 records, Journey's 3rd and 4th, maybe
Clips
5th
and,
record. And the list goes on. He did Bob Dylan's demo. So there's an interview I did for the AES with him, which if you've not seen it, go to
I have not.
Blue 7 Audio on YouTube, and you can see all 12 episodes.
Really?
I did this a couple of years ago. I interviewed him live in a facility I designed and built.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. But Fred, here's a guy who's been recording since 1948.
Yeah.
He came into the Euphonics and he goes, show me how it works. Not intimidated at all. And he loved working on that console.
Yeah.
He was like, any new technology, he's like, show me how it works. And he would just like, boom, he was there, just doing it.
Sounds like a Jim Gamble type.
Yeah.
You know, just not
just
daunted
whatever it
by
is,
the
let's do it.
technology.
You
Just
know?
let me get my head around it.
Yeah,
and I'm
let me
gonna
get my
run
head
this
around
thing.
it. We'll figure it out and
Yeah.
do it. You know, and Winston talking about the AEW thing. It's like, I'd be like him. I'd look at it and go, oh, this is a nightmare. Okay, let's figure out how it works. And just
That's
sit down
exactly,
and
that is the
go through
secret.
it.
You kind of acknowledge the mountain that's in front of you and then start climbing.
Yeah, and just start picking the pieces apart.
Yeah, it's
and
like,
figuring
Fred
it
was
out.
real innovative too. You know, I mean, it's like none of that stuff. I met Fred at the Automat actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he actually taught me a real cool trick about. This was back in the analog days about how to fix a snare, basically.
Oh, yeah.
So by using a speaker and some other shit. But anyway, you know, yeah, he was just amazing. I mean, to listen to him talk, you know, it's just.
the history of audio recording.
I learned
He's
some of the most.
kind of a god, really.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a legend.
And his mixing style is very simplistic, yet it is brilliant.
See, that's about mixing philosophy. I think some of the kids, because of all the tricks they got in their toolbox, they think that you have to break out all these tools and throw them at the problem.
I have a little problem.
Yeah, what is it?
You have cigarettes.
Yeah.
I have plugins.
Uh-oh, it's him. There he is.
does.
That's the guy.
Actually, we were talking
You have
about
any more
plugins.
It's like a drug addict. He's
It's horrible because I was doing reviews of these. So like Plugin Alliance, Waves, they gave me all their plugins. So I have so many. I finally had to sit down during the pandemic and go, all right, what's going? What's
'em.
not being used? Get it out of here.
Sure.
Right.
And even now, it's like I get stuck sometimes. I'll get in a loop where, ooh, let's try this. Ooh, let's try that.
Yeah.
And I got a whole bunch of new ones here recently from another company.
It's a rabbit hole,
which I
man.
can't talk about yet, but cool stuff. And I'm just like, but it's bad that I'm kind of not working a lot right now because now I'm like living out in the studio
his
messing
hands.
around with that stuff.
Destroying
So that's
himself.
not
Going down all
good.
these
It's
rabbit
not
holes.
good.
No, his
Yeah.
studio is actually really nice.
Yeah,
though.
I got to come by and see that.
Yes, please.
Seriously,
anytime.
I would like that
Just
very much.
let me know when you're down there. You can come by anytime.
It's got
very
some
kind.
great sounding recordings in there too.
Really?
Yes,
Is it
seriously.
good? What are we talking, like brand new stuff, old school outboard gear? What are we talking about?
Well, when I started it was based around Pro Tools to begin with. I started it in 2004. I had 5 racks, 6 feet high, full of outboard gear. I now have 2 that are 4 feet high, and it's mostly mic pre's.
Yeah.
I don't really use a lot of outboard anymore because it's kind of gotten to that point where what's happening in the DSP world, it's like, it's hard to beat that notion.
So
are
you're talking
times
about the
when
ones that emulate the old outboard?
Well, even the emulations, but it's getting beyond that. I'm getting to the point now, particularly where emulations are cool and I know them because
Yeah.
I've worked with those pieces of gear and I know what they will do.
Sure.
But there's so much new capability with DSP that I'm now looking at plugins that don't emulate anything.
They are their own
They're
things.
their own thing, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
It's crazy nuts. And
Yeah.
I just did a recording recently, a whole album where I had some things I needed to work on with a singer-songwriter
Okay.
that was not a great performer, but
You break out
capable.
the auto tune?
well, I actually use Melodyne. I can't stand autotune because I
that's
can
rough.
actually hear it. But
Yep.
but Melodyne is crazy
Blends.
nuts capable.
Yeah.
And they just did an update right at the end of the project where I was just like, where was this a month ago? But I had some things to fix. And one of the things we were talking about recording is that I really got into doing live recordings where I would go out and I wasn't even part of the PA.
Sure.
And I'd use a Joko black box and
I was gonna say, how are you
outboard
capturing it?
pre's
Yeah.
or a splitter and do recordings and then bring it back. And a lot of times in those scenarios, because you're in headphones and you're in the room,
Right.
you're taking a chance on what you get.
That's true.
And you may not know. It's amazing what I can fix now.
Once you got it home.
Yeah, it kind of blows my mind a little bit. It's a little scary.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, I can actually fix those issues now.
Yeah.
Whereas I can remember getting a recording about 15 years ago done at one of these recording schools.
Yeah, I love it.
That was
I'm still with
just-
him right now.
It was awful because the room had never been acoustically treated.
Of course not.
And to give an example, it was like there was a mic on the other side of the room that was for another instrument, and it was picking up more of the upright bass than the upright bass mic was. And it was just like, oh,
man.
you know. And now I can fix that problem.
Oh, you disappear that.
I could.
Nothing
There are
flat.
things I could do that I could not do before that were like, that's very cool. I have to say, it's very cool. It's also very dangerous, as you said.
I worry about getting to a place where it's too artificial. It's too
Well, and that's keeping the life in it's big to me.
yeah.
It's
Right.
really big to
I
me.
want some springing. I want some.
Yeah.
You know, I've been
And
feeling.
I also had another mentor back in the early 90s, Chad Blake, whom
Okay.
I'm sure you're familiar with.
I've heard.
Chad doesn't, you know, you don't put up a pristine mic and get a beautiful recording. Chad's like, what's the point of that? Let's fuck this thing up and let's do this and
It's
put
a
a
Brian
tube in
Eno
front of it.
approach.
And,
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
Like you think the hi-fi is broken.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Chad taught me a lot about that. It's like, change what you're doing. You know, our drummer used to look at what I was doing to his drum kit and he's like, I don't know what you're doing, but it sounds cool.
Yeah. I'm just
You
gonna
know,
trust it.
putting boxes and tubes in front of the mics, and,
Right,
you know,
right.
just whatever. I have a collection of 1/4-inch school recording reel mic. Remember those little mic, the little electrets they used to give in the little recording reel-to-reels for
Yeah.
schools back in the 60s and 70s?
You're using
I
those?
have a whole bunch of those, and I use them all the time.
No shit. On
Because they
miking
have a-
drums.
Oh, anything. Vocals.
Really?
Yeah, they have a
Hell.
personality.
They have a personality.
I agree with
but here's
that.
the thing I love about them.
Tell me.
They have a 1/4-inch plug on the end, which fits right into an amplifier.
Which is true, which you
They
can
go right into an amplifier.
You're not wrong
beautifully.
about that.
and get even more personality.
Yeah,
So,
true,
you know, I'll do
true.
something like I have a beautiful M49. I'll put that up, and I have this realistic Electret from like 1972.
Yeah.
I'll take it and I'll run it out around the corner and I'll put it in my guitar amp. I'll mic the amp, and it'll be a little loud, so I won't give it to the singer. I'll keep it where I can hear it.
Yeah.
And then later on, I'll time align it. And you know, if the singer's doing something balls out, I'll just kind of tuck it in there, and it just gives this pump and grunge to things that's really cool.
Yeah, that sounds
It's
nice.
really cool. Or, you know, even, you know, drums. You need a little more punch out of the top of the kick drum.
Yeah.
I have a little practice guitar amp. I'll take that, or a bass. I'll take that and I'll run the bass in that and do a DI. And I won't let the bass player hear that thing. And I'll just put in a little, a $6,000 B&K mic on that, an Omni mic right on it,
Yeah.
and record that nasty sound out of that little amp and just tuck it into the bass, and they'll come in and go, wow, it's never sounded that punchy. And it's just little things like that
Yeah.
where you kind of tuck something subtly in. You can really change the tonal character and make it interesting.
Yeah. Give it character, really.
Exactly,
Yeah,
and that
body.
goes back to what you're saying about plugins stealing. They really can.
Yeah.
So, two things have happened. That, and, you know, it's how it's recorded when I'm doing mix-wise.
Mm-hmm.
But also, a lot of them are now emulating saturation and different kinds of modulation things. The DSP capabilities are getting much, much better,
Yes.
especially at 64-bit. And they can do some pretty cool things. And there's some interesting tools coming out that I'm like, ooh, what does that do? Oh, that is seriously messed up. What do I do with that? And then one day I'll be doing something and go, oh, bingo, I know what I can use on this.
Pull it out.
And you just,
Stick it
if
in
you
and-
tuck a little bit of it in, it suddenly provides this character that was not there originally. And that's kind of where I think things are going. And Chad, Andrew Sheps, he does this kind of
Yes.
thing. You know, I watch these guys. I've talked to both Andrew and Chad. I've known for a long time. You know, I talk to these guys and query them about, you know, why, you know, what did you do on that? And he goes, well, I can't give you all my sauce, but they're actually really open about it, both of them.
Well,
And they
you know,
will talk.
this is a newer phenomenon because, you know, back in the day, that was people were kept their stuff real close. Their secret sauce. They didn't want to share that around. They didn't want to spread it out. They didn't want to lose that niche. But now, you know, some of the look at Robert, look at Scoville. Scoville ain't gonna keep nothing back. You ask him a direct
Scoville is
question.
making the rest of us look like real schmucks, and I love it.
You know, Bob
love
is
it.
one of the. I get to beat him up a little bit, and he's a friend, you know, and we got strong feelings for each other. So he gives me
Wait
a
a
little.
minute. I want to. Okay, hold on.
Because I called him Bob. You should hear some of the things.
Pisses him off.
I can do this. He gives me a certain amount of latitude, then we fuck with each other in a very kind and caring way.
He does
But-
with me too.
Yeah, but I've always appreciated that, and Greg Price is like this too. And
I've heard. I don't know Greg, but yeah, I've heard.
Greg is a very giving of his. You know, He's still one of the top guys in his game. We're literally one of the top 3 or 4 live engineers in the world, and he takes in the young folks around here when he's not on tour. He's currently out with Alice Cooper, but when he's on tour and they come in and they spend a couple more hours in the mornings with him, and he will avail them of every trick and everything that he knows. And this is a relatively new thing in our industry. Back in the day, I remember, people would throw out their gear, initialize their board, and walk away before anybody could come back up and take over in a festival situation and in any kind of a live situation. They would literally dead their settings. They just would. There was just no way they wouldn't let you back in the real estate, in the front of house real estate. There was just a thing. And I've seen this change in the last, it's probably the last decade or so.
Yeah, I've seen it too. I was fortunate that some of my mentors, Tom Carr, who was our chief engineer at the Annex, he really showed me a lot of things. And Fred was always open. And in fact, Fred would come in. I became his regular second because, one, we would laugh endlessly about things and stories. Fred would tell the most amazing stories.
Yeah.
But he'd come in and he'd go, "Okay, we're doing a whole horn section today. Put up whatever you want, Chris. Let's find out." And so I would pick things, and he'd go, "Okay, well that's kind of weird," but and we would never change anything out. Yeah. It would work for whatever he was doing, and that kind of openness it made me come up with a basic philosophy, which is, we're not in competition with anyone but ourselves. We are only in competition to become better ourselves.
Yeah.
And that was kind of because I used to kind of be one of those guys who,
Sure.
Clear off the board or do whatever, not share things. And it was like, I realized one day it's acidic, it's, caustic, and it serves no purpose.
Right.
And
it definitely hems you in a little bit.
Yeah. And it will come back to bite you,
Yeah.
So you talk about, we sort of loosely mentioned the schools. I actually worked at one of them. I taught at a school here in San Jose for 3 years, taught live sound and recording.
Okay.
And it's that same thing. It really, I kept saying that to the students. You're in competition, no one but yourself. And the majority of them would get it. There'd always be a couple that would struggle with that concept. But it taught me a lot about teaching them. I probably learned more than they did. But one of the nicest things out of that was a lot of students would tell me, "I learned more in your course than I learned in any other."
Well, see, that's a high compliment.
That was like, okay, I'm doing, regardless of how bad a teacher I am, I've succeeded in the level that's important.
Yeah. I've had a couple of very accomplished teachers come in here from SAE, Full Sail, and anybody that knows me for any period of time knows I struggle a great deal, because I deal with the graduates that come from these places, and they come through my door and they'll stand in front of me. I'll say, "So what do you do?" And they'll say something like, a little 23-year-old, all soaking wet, 108 pounds. And I'll say, "What are you doing?" And I'll say, "Well, I'm an A1." And then I fall down laughing, and then get up and apologize for being a rude bastard and say, "Okay, well, I'm going to bring in here, and you're gonna show me how to make an L21." Okay, so I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
Go
exactly.
grab me an L8. Where's that? I don't know. To me, there's steps. I worry about this white gloving thing they try to teach these kids as they zap them for all this money, and then they send them out on the public. Now, some of these kids got really good ears, but they can't. If you put them in the mix, literally at the front of house or a monitor situation, and something goes wrong, they're screwed.
They're lost.
They got nothing. They have nothing in their bag of tricks to know there's something failing in the split. There's something going in the RF. There's some cabling. I don't care what it is. So to me, I think Winston's of a similar mind. I need you to know from the ground up. I really need that. I need you to.
If you hear this and that problem, you know where it is.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And that's, and that's.
I need that
I had to learn that.
Yeah.
And I learned that the hard way in the early days because I didn't have any mentors. But that was kind of when I started teaching. I realized immediately, I'm not going to teach the loose stuff. I'm actually not going to teach what they want me to teach in this course.
Sure.
And I got to design the live sound course myself.
Good.
So that was what I did. It was basically all the basics and really not much per se in mixing or doing all the fun things that they all think they want to do.
Right.
It was like I ran them through soldering, I ran them through signal
wire,
flow, I ran them through wire,
Yeah,
connectors, types, all that kind of stuff, how to choose amplifiers, all that kind of stuff. And at the end of it, a lot of them were like, that was why they were saying, I learned more in your course than I did in the others, because the others were just doing this superfluous stuff over the top.
That's right.
Just skimming the top of the water to get them in, because you only got, so many weeks, 12 weeks.
That's right.
To teach them.
That's
and
correct.
You can't really teach what we know in 12 weeks.
No.
So you have to, I had to actually sit down and kind of go, okay, what do I teach? How do I do this?
You did
Because I didn't know how to teach.
You did them way more of a service by what you're telling me than what I've seen in the average person coming out. Now, there's some exceptions. Mikey went through one of these, but Mikey then came out of that thing without his head up in the air, and many of his friends, and went off and, got in the trenches.
Yeah.
And did real shit.
Well, there's always a small percentage that do that.
Yeah.
There is, and I learned to identify those.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it was like those were the ones like, I got a gig this weekend at Stanford with a small rig.
Right.
You're helping me.
Yeah.
And I will pay you.
Yeah.
And they were like, what? You're paying me? I'm like, yeah, I'm paying you because you're going to be working. And you're going to work your ass off. So you better remember everything I taught you. And I had a couple of the one that made me most happy was I had a girl. Now, I only had, in the 3 years they were there, I only had like 5 girls in all the courses, which kind of bummed me out. But
Yeah.
I had one girl, and she seemed a little goofy. No way. As soon as you put her behind a console or behind gear, she was on that instantly. And if she didn't understand what was going on, she would ask.
Yeah, see, that's...
What is this?
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
and I ended up doing a
They don't bring
huge
the
event.
ego bullshit. That's
No.
what's cool about the Bettys. And
She would-
and they got good developed ears, and
Yeah.
they're really meticulous.
Oh, I always used to tell the boys, be afraid, the girls hear better than
They
you do.
hear better. That's a scientific fact.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
They hear better than we
That's
do.
right. Yeah. No, you're not wrong.
But
You're absolutely correct.
that made me very happy, and she's still kind of peripherally in the business, which also made me very happy.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because not very many of them stay. It's been nice to see Sound Girls doing their thing and upping
They're killing
that,
it.
and getting some people into crew. And Robert's had a couple of ladies come through the back lounge. I'm still disappointed at the shimmering small numbers, but it would be nice because
Yeah.
us old boys club, it's time to break that club up a little
I
bit.
couldn't agree more. We talked about this last week. It's a little boring, and again, I never understood any society that would not be mindful of half of their population and the unique contributions they could make, and somehow this, like you mentioned, the boys club thing. I'm not sure what is the limiting value or factor that is in our industry, but I know that we've never been more inclusive in trying to be mindful of it, but it's still just, it's such a slow rate that it turns over and it's happening. But some of the, like you mentioned, the developments like with soundgirls.org, I reached out to Carrie Keys yesterday.
Yeah, Carrie's one of them. She's
She's
really good.
extraordinary. As a monitor engineer, literally one of the best in the game, 30 or so years with Pearl
Right.
Jam.
I know.
mean,
I've been wanting to sit and pick her brain a little bit because monitor engineering, as you and I know, is,
that's
a specialized world.
That's the big dog seat. To
yeah,
me, I've
that's
always thought that was where the hard work begins and
Yeah,
ends.
that takes a lot of skill sets that you
Yeah,
don't.
yeah.
What was the picture I saw the other day? It showed shoes. It showed the boots for stage crew and the tennis shoes for the monitor engineers and sandals for the front of house.
Yeah. I always thought the better one was the picture of the big lion, the big, lion with the big male lion with the big tuft of hair, the big mane of hair, and then the picture down below where it's another lion. And that's the monitor guy. And then another lion, he's got his hair all parted on the side. That's a front of house guy. I was like, bingo.
You hear that, Robert? We're talking about you.
No, I love me some Bob Scoville. He knows I love him. But, I got to come around and mess with him every so often. He's an extraordinary cat. We're very lucky to have him in our world. And that community that he's built over there at the back lounge. And have you done much with the labs that he does?
Yeah, I am actually behind, and I need to spend on those. But the problem for me was that, of course, when I wasn't working, I was trying to learn other things.
Sure.
And then it was like one day I'd go, oh, I need that lab, and I'd go and watch that lab.
Yeah, well, luckily
but
it's like
I want to
that.
watch them all. I need to go through them all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, luckily you can go back on them. I kind of like doing the stuff as much as I can live with them, but like you mentioned, we're working, man. We're doing stuff.
he does
in
them
life.
on Mondays, and sometimes that's not exactly the best day.
Exactly, and we had a thing where God, I don't know, about part of a year, I would imagine.
You talking about the Thursday?
Yeah, the Thursday classes. So we had a thing that was kind of not entirely exclusive to Sound Image, but we had some outliers that would peek in on it. But largely the Sound Image crews from the different shops would go to this Thursday thing he did, and it was extraordinarily informative, and it was largely to do with the S6L training. And if anybody knows the S6L, it's Robert Scoville.
Well,
I
helping design it,
that
sort of
helps.
makes you.
Tends to help. Yeah, and we have the beta testers right in here with Brad Maddox and Greg Price. So before that thing goes out to the real world, they come and try to break them in here. They're literally searching out any bug, any little glitch, any weirdness, and they a lot of backup on that. So we're very fortunate to be situated the way we are, so we can kind of get on top of things. And
I'm pretty impressed. I love the setup and the organization. That shows me these are people I would like to work with.
Oh, we would.
I walk in and things are neat and orderly and everything's where it needs to be because I'm a bit anal retentive.
All right, that's me, dude.
Yeah.
I won't lie. I'll take the heat on that.
And I have to be that way,
you.
for the install stuff because you're looking at drawings that are 30, 40 pages, and I've got to sort through them all and figure everything out and really figure out, okay, sure, I can just wham this stuff in here, but wait, there's a factor here, there's a factor here, and then there's me, the guy who comes later and has to fix it and gets pissed off when I walk in. And the sad thing was I built, just prior to the pandemic, I spent 8 months at Dropbox. We were building a cutting edge system using optical.
Oh,
And they tore apart my control room that took me 3 months to build.
Why?
Because Dropbox made some mistakes. And I'll say their name out loud. Generally I won't, but Dropbox, they made some mistakes. They overextended themselves. And a lot of the people who were hired who were really good were let go.
That's too
and
bad.
Nobody knew. So equipment was literally wandering off in the building. So this room that I took 3 months of my life to build, one of the nicest compliments I got from the guys I work with is like, God, we were crying to take this apart because it was so neat and so
pretty.
orderly and put together.
Yeah.
And they go, at least it came apart fast.
Yeah, efficient.
It's like, and then I was like, don't send me over there. I don't want to go to that job.
It'd be too heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally
when
relate.
you put that much time and effort in something, and it was a little bit of a struggle. So
that's too
to
bad.
get it done, but
Well, sometimes
things change.
you build a thing, and then at some point you gotta step back.
Well, yeah.
Let it go, let it off into the world, and
You
whatever
have
the
to.
world does to it.
It's hard. It's actually, as I gather, you're probably like me, and Winston is too. It's hard to do that.
Oh,
when
you
when
get
have
a
hand
sense of
in
possession,
something
a
very
sense of
personally.
ownership, and your name's all over. You got all those hours
Yeah.
in there. Your heart's in it.
You know how it is, and in your mind you know exactly how it was put together. And
Yeah.
it was that way with the Apple projects. Like my client is
I'm sorry.
client is now. Did I say fruit? Oh, how do
You
say
said fruit. That's what I heard.
All right. So
I heard
anyway,
something about fruit.
it's all right.
Yeah. It really isn't.
It's
Not here.
public knowledge now. So
Not here. We don't say that
But
word.
the client, it's
Yes.
his now.
Yeah.
It's not mine.
Yeah. At some point.
But
it
he
is-
does call me sometimes.
It's easier said than done, though. You're not wrong to say it in words than it is to actually walk away and be truly broken and free from it. It's a thing. It's a real thing.
It takes a while to kind of walk it off.
That's right. What does the future hold for you and Blue 7 Audio?
I don't know. That's kind of a question because we are no longer in a cyclical way in this industry, either industry, live sound or studio.
That's true.
Or even installation, broadcast, that kind of stuff. It's evolving.
Yeah.
All three of them are changing in different ways.
That's right.
I'll continue with DCA for a while. I still get occasional recording projects, do a lot of mixing projects, which that was kind of the goal many years ago, but as I said, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
It's kind of that. I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm finally getting around to composing and doing some music, something I did not do during the pandemic.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if you know who Brian Beller is, the bass player for Joe Satriani.
I've actually done a lot of work with Joe, but I honestly can't say I know Brian.
Brian's an amazing guy, but he and I were having a conversation during the pandemic last year that, I'm just not there. It's like everybody's like, oh, you need to put music out, you need to stream, you need to play. And both of us were like,
You weren't
and
feeling
he was
it.
coming off of touring for 3 years straight. And he was like, I'm just kind of not there. And I wasn't either. I was like, I'm not there.
That's
It's
not one of
where
those
I'm
things
at.
you force,
No.
It's happening or it's not happening. You know when that is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There does need to be an occasional kick in the ass to get out and work in the studio and get something going.
You're not wrong.
It's always that first step. Once you're out there doing it, it tends to kind of become a snowball, and then people are like, dude, you need to eat, you need to shower, you need to quit using diapers and the pens and go in the house, okay? It
Eating
kind of
food out
snowballs
of a
into
can
that.
right at the desk.
hands glued down.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not something you force. You have to. There are some people in the world who are amazingly creative all the time, and that blows my mind. For
Yeah.
me, it comes in spurts and spades, and there are times when there's nothing.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I have ideas, but it's.
Oh, I've experienced it that way as well.
You know.
And I think that's probably the more norm than
I'm
the
hoping.
Prince model where you're just turning shit out nonstop,
Yeah.
packing it into your safe, you know. It's just,
There's some people I know who are just.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
yeah, that's
And
true.
how creative they are and what they can do and what they create.
Well,
It's just craziness.
when the inspiration strikes, I think that's when is the time that makes sense to, you know, avail yourself to it. But to force it is probably not, at least for many of us.
No. But in terms of future, I mean, also, you know, I still keep my ear to the ground for live things. You know, I always, when I was doing it in the 80s, the dream was always, of course, to be doing the sheds and doing, you know, big gigs with big artists. And,
Yeah.
you know, I look at that now, it's like, yeah, I would like to do that, but that's not necessarily a goal. If it happens, it happens.
It has its place.
It has its place, and you know, I would wholeheartedly dig into it and do it and have a great time, but it's not like I'm necessarily hunting that now, you know.
Well, there's a certain wisdom that should set in with our age. You know, we're men of a certain age. I have a few friends that have regional markets where they kind of hold down the 1,500 and under seat kind
right.
of thing, and they've done, you know, hundreds to thousands of shows over their career, but they haven't had that in their game, and sometimes express envy, I guess, is for the lack of a better word, that some of us other folks have had these different experiences, and I try to inform them that it's kind of that. Watch out what you wish for, you know. Pretty
'cause
rapidly, you know, the show
may
part
find
of show
yourself-
business goes out and it's business.
Yeah.
And regardless of what, you know, if you're out there trying to put your best foot forward and bring the best product, because, you know, making experience is really what we do. Making memories is what we do. So if I'm doing it with 300 people or 3,000 or 30,000 people, I kind of don't really use that as the equating, the governing factor. It's just go out there and, you know, make it sound good, man. Do what you do, bring your part to it.
But you're right. I mean, you elevate your business into a whole different domain with a different set of needs. And
That's right.
if you're not prepared for that or understand that, that's something I've learned a lot running my own studio over the last 18 years is like,
Yeah.
you know, before you dive into something, give it some careful thought and think about
That's right.
what your plan of action is, because that might eat you alive.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You were
It
absolutely
may well
not wrong.
eat you alive, and then you may be suffering. And I've had some situations where that occurs. But, you know, I actually have to kind of look at my career and go, you know, I'm no meteor shooting star. People don't know my name, but I've been very fortunate in my career. I've worked with some really cool people. I've done some great projects. I've done
Sounds like
some
it.
things I'm very proud of. They're not,
Good.
you know, they're not upper echelon or whatever, but, you know, I can't complain.
From what I can tell, you know your shit. You've gotten around. You've been involved with some very cool projects, you know. And
I have been lucky.
yeah, it's the footprint we leave behind, my brother.
It is.
It absolutely is. And then, you know, being able to meet and experience really interesting people and share the passion that we have for audio and the live production business, any part of the production business. It's it's always exciting for me. I don't really care what level you come in. It's really the way you approach it. And so it's been a treat having you on the show, my
Thank you,
friend.
man. I
It's been-
appreciate being asked. And speaking of conversations that go on for hours about
I've
things
talked
in
to
the
him.
industry,
I know. Yeah.
Winston and I,
Winston
man,
this guy is a wealth of knowledge, and he is very
I got some stories.
very loquacious. Yes, we love this man. We couldn't. We really depend on him in many ways for some of our bigger things that we do, and we get up to some shit here. So we know exactly what he's capable of, and we've been lucky enough to have him sitting in that seat over there,
Yep.
and dig around in some of his history. We know him largely as the Pointer Sisters guy, but you know, I know that his history is so much deeper. I think he had 7 pages. 7 pages. Of
you know, because I barely
just the
skimmed the
people-
service in
7
the evening.
pages
So, yeah.
of the bands that he's worked for, because that's also how he is. He's very. I'm like, yeah, give me a little breakdown so I can write the show a little better. I got 7 pages. It was awesome. It was so cool, dude. It was awesome. It was like alphabetized and shit. It was amazing.
Yes, there does have to be a bit of OCD in our industry.
Yeah, well, he has seen, he has done, and the same for all of us here. But listen, it was absolutely a treat. Thank you for coming down and sharing with my
Thanks
audience
for inviting me.
your
Appreciate it.
experiences and your point of view. It's been very interesting and fun.
Cool.
Thank
It's
you, my
nice
friend.
to come in here, man.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Hey, can
Appreciate
I
you.
ask him one thing before we go?
You got one question. We're 9 minutes over time. Hit him.
Okay. You worked with Ronnie Montrose, didn't you,
Yeah.
at one point? Can you
Badass.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Quickly.
You could put it in a nutshell, Daddy.
Okay, really
But
quick.
I'm very interested in Ronnie Montrose.
Ronnie was such a big.
He was amazing.
Oh, he was huge. He was
Amazing.
huge in my career as a guitar player. I mean, he was a huge influence on me.
Yeah, he's a badass.
I actually met him over the course of various times, like every decade, either as an opening act, later recording an album at the Annex. We ended up becoming friends. And I got a call once, I don't know, about 2008, 2009. He had a gig at a horrible venue in Santa Clara called the Avalon. Thankfully, it's gone. And said, hey, can you come do sound? My regular guy's sick. And I ended up being with him for several years after that, off and on, doing shows, doing stuff. Worked with him on the pre-production of the album that was posthumously mixed by another sound guy that I've known for a long time, working with him, and the 10 by 10 record. So that was kind of cool because it has all the different singers on it that, you know, Sammy and
Yeah, he worked with a lot
Keith
of very
St. John
extraordinary
and Eric
artists.
Martin and a long list of people.
Yeah.
And so I helped him with the pre-production on that, which was really cool. And then of course, you know, Ronnie took his own life, and that was a very sad day for me because I had really started to kind of getting to be really close friends with him. We actually did a couple of. He liked to go fishing.
Yeah.
My idea of fishing is a chair on the side of the water with a beer.
Not his.
And no, but we would go together, go camping in the Sierras, and we went a couple of times, and it was cool. It was
you
cool.
got
I got
those-
to kind of know the guy a little bit. There were still things I didn't know about him. Ronnie was a lot deeper than most people realize.
Yeah.
He was a fairly complex guy.
Yeah, that's my understanding of him. He was a heavy guy, and his contribution to guitar and rock and roll in itself
As
was
soon as his fingers hit those strings, it was just like tone for days.
Yeah.
And
It
just
was
texture. It was wonderful.
seriously incredible, and
But it was cool to do,
very
to
influential.
mix his band and work with him and do that live. And because, you know, I worked with him in the studio, and there are very different things. They are way different things.
Yeah, I imagine.
So it was nice to do some stuff with him live, and I actually have Roger Wiersema, who was the vice president of Music Annex, who now works for I forget what they're called, Alt Systems, out of LA. It used to be called sorry, name's slipping my mind right now. But Roger was the one who introduced me to him for doing the live stuff, and Tom Carr introduced me to him for doing the album. And the first time I met him, I do have to tell a story. No nutshell on this one.
All right, you're killing your own show right now, baby.
18, I'm in a band. We're actually, it's a little older than that. We're really bad. Somehow we get the opening slot for Montrose at the Stone in Palo Alto. We're bad. We're not good. Stage crew and all do not treat us nicely. They were kind of being mean to us, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting backstage, not feeling very good about the whole experience. And this little guy comes up to me with a shaved head. Now, I knew Ronnie with hair from pictures. This little guy with very intense blue eyes. Laser beams was our nickname for him. And he says, so, how things going? And I tell him, you know, he's talking to me. And he disappears. 10 minutes later, the whole backstage crew is like treating us like gods. And we leave, we go to see, and that guy comes out on stage with a guitar, and I went, oh, that was Ronnie. I had no idea, right?
Yeah.
So years later, when I met Ronnie, he's looking at me and he goes, have we met before? And Ronnie was like this. He would remember people. I go, yeah, but you wouldn't remember this. He goes, tell me. And he goes, oh, I remember that. He goes, yeah, I went and talked to the stage manager. I was unhappy with him about that.
Wow.
And that's the kind of person Ronnie was.
Yeah.
He'd remember you, and he'd stand up for you.
That's pretty cool.
It was very cool.
Yeah.
So that's my Ronnie story.
Well, you know, we worked with Sammy for a batch of time, and I had more than one occasion where he would reminisce about him, and he remembers him very fondly, and that he was very influential in his life. And, you know, we all know it his guitar, well, many of us, I don't think we all do, but many of us know about his guitar career. He was just a monster. It was extraordinary. And I don't think I ever got to personally work with the man, but I certainly heard enough about him. And, you know, in my own study of music and love of music, he was a big part of that, and so it was a tragic.
Part of mine too.
Yeah, for when he went away, that was a sad time in music. But some people aren't built for this, for the longevity. They come in short and bright, and they leave their contribution.
I usually
and
find
move
the
on.
most creative ones. You know, we were talking earlier about that.
Yeah.
The most creative are the meteors. They really do
that's
burn
right.
out real
Yeah,
fast.
yeah, and if you've been in the game, I've dealt with this with Chris Cornell and a couple others, Scott Whelan, a few other folks that don't need to go into names. But yeah, I've seen this before. I was on the last Nirvana tour. Yeah, we got to see this before, and it's not much of a mystery.
Chris Cornell
at
was a
this
big
point.
painful one
That
for
one
me.
sucked. That one was.
That one seriously sucked.
I kind of I didn't even see that coming. I mentioned Nirvana before. That you could have telegraphed that one from another zip code. Okay, that was as clear as days. Particularly, yeah, I'm gonna come out. I got to go now. I'm 15 minutes after my director's getting on my ass. Listen, it was Trade Avenue. Thank you, my brother. Thank you, my brother.
Thanks, guys.
It was a pleasure. All right, guys, thank you for being here for this long ass show. I couldn't help myself, and I didn't even use the script. That's the second show where look at that, left him on the table. Sometimes you just go with the flow and lean in. This guy was super fun. It was great to have him here. Listen, why don't you come see us next week? I know you got 1,000 places to be, 1,000 choices you could take, and you come here and hang out with us. We appreciate it very much. I want to do a quick shout out to Charlie Zaricki, Pat O'Doul. Hi, Sue Kearney. Lovely to have you here. And I know a bunch of our friends went to Cubby Sedgwick's funeral this on Monday. We couldn't make it out. We were slammed bringing home shows, but he's missed, and he was a great guy and a kind of an institution at the IATSE 16 and all the things in his music, and he was a special cat and fuck cancer. So right on to his family and so on. We got love for the man. We appreciate you coming here. We do this every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will be back next week with the one and only Captain William Snoopy Farquhar. Come and see us then. Until then, be kind to each other and good to yourselves. Have a good evening. Good night.